Hey everybody, welcome back to CALLOUS Draft League Playoffs. As you know, the semifinal teams are the orange team and the purple team. LouRinaldi is the captain, in fact, of the orange team. He'll be our player one today on the left. And we've got Vaz for the purple team on the right-hand side. This is, of course, you guys have figured out, an individual draft, but we'll get to the team drafts whenever those finish up. In the meantime, let's jump into the action. LouRinaldi is going to be our player one, like I said, and he's going to ban out Tyranitar. Pretty normal. Coming back to Vaz. Skarmory ban. Pretty common. Snorlax ban for Lou. And Metagross ban for Vaz. All of that within the realm of what is normal for this metagame. We saw a weird ban last time. Blissey a little weird. Registeel a lot weird. No such weirdness here. All this stuff pretty standard. None of the stuff, I mean, you can't ban everything, right? So, like, I don't know that Skarmory are auto banned. Sometimes it's Celebi, sometimes it's Gar, whatever. But all of this stuff within the realm of very common, very viable, normal bans. So with what is left, Lou decides the best poke remaining for him is Celebi, and he might be right. That would probably be my pick in this situation. Question now, of course, is how does Vaz respond? And don't know if this is the response that I would make, but he's going to go Salamence plus Zapdos. There could be a little bit of the Salamence is being picked because the Skarm is banned and because you're picking it into Celebi, so I guess it gets a little bit better in that regard, but I still think this is too early for Salamence. I still think that it's been shown that there are some Mons, the Bulky Waters, Gengar, Regice, that I think are just better than Salamence. Not by miles and miles, so this isn't like an egregious, what the hell are you doing kind of pick, but I do think it's a little early, and I still think if you wanted this poke, you probably could have gotten it a little bit later if you just pushed it a little bit. To me, things like Gengar, Starmie, Regice, the two good bulky waters, that kind of stuff would be more of a priority in my mind. So I don't love the Salamence pick, but I don't think it's terrible either. And then Zapdos is fine. Again, maybe a little bit early. I don't think I rated as highly as some of those things that I just listed, but I do think that it's better than Salamence. Nevertheless, these are the picks. Let's see how Lou is going to respond. Going to go with Aerodactyl. Makes plenty of sense. Good into both of these after all. And then he's going to go for an early Regice, which I'm down for. You guys know how high I am on that Pokemon. And I'm surprised to see him make this pick. I think people, other than Zakaru and I, they know that it's good, but they don't necessarily think it's like this good. The level that I'm talking about, where it's absolutely, in my mind, a top 10 mon in the format. But LouRinaldi seems to agree. Yeah, I'm going to give him lots of respect for that pick. I think that's a good pick, but I think those of you who have been following the format at home might look at this and go, isn't that a little early? You really want Regice over Gengar, over Milotic, over Blissey, all that stuff? My answer is yes. Yes, you do. But time will tell whether that ends up being a wise decision or not. Vaz on the swingback is going to go double bulky water. That makes a lot of sense to me when he's already the Salamence drafter. I don't know if he had pre-planned this or if this is reactionary to the fact that his opponent didn't take any and to the fact that his opponent took Aerodactyl. But either way, given the way that the draft has developed thus far, I think going double bulky water here makes a lot of sense. Like I said, you're both protecting your Ments and you're targeting the arrow on the other side. Given the early Regice pick, and yeah, given the overall sequencing of the draft, I think double bulky water makes plenty of sense. This is a strange response. It is obviously in response to the double water, but man, what is up with these early electrics lately? It's going to be Raikou Jolteon. We saw this in the previous draft as well. I mean, granted, all three of them in the previous draft ended up on the same side, but that's not really the point. These days, neither Raikou nor Jolteon are generally round one picks, but here we are in these playoff drafts, and they very much are. Grabbing double electric in round one again, not even at the end of round one. They both still have a double pick, but I guess Raikou and Jolteon has shot up in the orange team's mind as far as the playoff pick order is concerned. Don't get me wrong, I think both Raikou and Jolteon are good. I just don't know that either one is a proper round one pick most of the time. But these guys seem to be seeing it differently. I mean, I would never be able to take Raikou or Jolteon over some of the stuff like Gengar and Blissey are still floating. I would never be able to do that. Starmie's still out there. Yeah, I don't know, man. They just see the metagame differently than I do, and that's fine. But when we have a strong division on where things fall, ultimately somebody's going to end up being right and somebody's going to end up being wrong. So with time and reps, we will figure out just how good these electrics really are. But that being said, these picks are obviously influenced by the fact that there's double water and Zapdos and Mence on the other side. It's a very nuanced format. So even though I still don't like them better than the things that I listed, I can see why he would pick them here. It does make sense given the state of the draft. The problem with picking things like that here, this is such an incredible end of round double pick for Vaz. You're giving him Blissey and Gengar as 5 and 6 as player 2. That seems like an absolute steal to me. So that's the thing. Like, anytime somebody makes a pick, it's not, oh, those pokes are bad, or, oh, you're not going to get use out of them, or whatever. That isn't the problem. There's too many good Pokemon in this. Anything that you pick that doesn't blow is going to be useful. The question is, are you taking the best things? Are you depriving the best things of your opponent? And that's where I would say no. It's not that Raikou and Jolteon suck. They're just not better than Gengar or Blissey, which is what you just gave back. So that's my hesitation if you're in Lou's seat. Regardless, he's going to wrap up round 1 with Starmie, which is, I mean, obligatory. This is super late for Starmie. And also Registeel. So, the special walls are relatively decent right now. So Lax got banned, and then you've got Celebi and Regice, which are special walls, and then Registeel. So you could argue that Lou's all set. He's got all 3 already. He doesn't really need to worry about it. But on the other side, Blissey, obviously, and then sometimes Zapdos can function as a special wall as well. So they both really padded that area of the draft pretty early on, and I don't think that should be a huge deal. It doesn't look to me so far like it's one of those drafts where random Kingdra, random Alakazam is going to go bananas and just sweep one of them, but you never know. Well, I guess now I do know about part of it, because the first ban here for Vaz is Alakazam, so now I do know that that won't be sweeping anybody in this particular draft. On the swing back, it's going to be Fortress, which I like a lot better as a ban from player 1 than I do from player 2, because remember, it's going to be Vaz here with the double pick once we're through with these bans, and he thinks it is a very real possibility that his opponent would have taken Fortress here, which I agree with. So I think from player 1 seat, especially when you have a spinner and your opponent has none, Fortress is a good ban from that spot. So now Regirock from Vaz, General Goodmon, and he also does have the Mence and the Zapdos that are threatened by it, and some other things to various extents, but it's one of the overall most powerful pokes remaining, and it threatens stuff on his team, so it makes sense as a ban. And Dugtrio, normally a poke that you know that I don't like, and don't think highly of when people pick or ban it, because it doesn't make a lot of sense. In this case, it does make sense. It's good against Raikou, it's good against Registeel, and it's decent enough against Celebi and against Starmie to warrant a ban. I think Dugtrio is somewhat threatening for Lou, and the ban in this case, unlike most of the time when people click Dugtrio, has merit behind it, has thought behind it, and does in fact make sense. So we go over to Vaz now for the double pick. Love these Mons, both of them. Gonna grab Gyarados and Dragonite. I definitely approve of those picks, and I don't care at all that he's taking Gyarados into quad Thunderbolt user, potentially, in Regice, Raikou, Jolteon, Starmie. It just doesn't matter. 2 of those, you can just Dragon Dance and then EQ and kill them both. Outspeed and kill them both, the Raikou and the Jolteon. And you can threaten the Starmie and the Regice in other ways. Regice, ironically, is actually probably the worst matchup out of those for the Gyarados. But remember, a lot of the things that you think counter it, Raikou, Jolteon, Aerodactyl, they have to worry about things like Thunder Wave or worry about things like Dragon Dance, and it's not nearly as safe as you think it is. Not to mention that all the fighters right now are unbanned and free to roam, they're going to surely get picked up sooner rather than later. So when they start divvying up fighters, probably they'll end up with some on both teams. Intimidate is an ability that you very much want. Salamence and Gyarados on the same team, big advantage when it comes to neutralizing the fighters. Not to mention that Zapdos and Dragonite are both fighting resist, as is Gengar. So when it comes down to the fighter game, I mean, obviously Lou has a couple resistances as well in the Starmie and the Celebi, but right now it looks to me like Vaz is far better prepared for the upcoming fighter wars. Lou is going to make sensible picks as well. He's going to go a completely different way with it, but it makes a lot of sense for his strategy. He's going to go Cloyster and Claydol, taking the best spiker arguably still available. It depends on if you value Glalie or not, but he does need a spinner. So he's now going to pick up his second and third spinner. He is completely done and all set in that regard in one fell swoop. The Claydol is also going to protect his electric, so that makes sense. And he takes a spiker and a spinner at the same time to reduce the spinner options for Vaz. So Lou is obviously overwhelmingly winning the spiker spinner war right now. And the good thing with this, too, so he's got 3 spinners against an opponent who doesn't have spikes, but because of what the spinners are, these are mons that are not useless if they don't end up spinning. Like if you take a Tentacruel or something and then you don't use it as a spinner, it is just pretty bad. You can go like Swords Dance or some set like that, but it's pretty bad. Whereas, okay, no spin, I'll just go Off Star, that works. Or I'll just go T-Wave Recover 2 attacks, that works. Same thing with Claydol, like get to drop Rapid Spin, cool. I pick up Shadow Ball, I pick up Rock Slide, I pick up Refresh. I'll not spin, that's fine. So he's pretty well set up, whether his opponent picks up spikers or not. He's going to get use out of these spinners. They're all just good mons, and he's set either way. And the spiker options between his ban and his pick are pretty crappy already. It's kind of like Glalie and then a bunch of junk. So we'll see whether or not Vaz does want to participate in that or whether he sees this going a different way. But Vaz is going to go more down the rabbit hole of what I talked about, in that he thinks he is far better at handling fighters than his opponent is, which I agree with. And he's going to go with Heracross and Hariyama. As I've said before, I generally prefer Medicham over Heracross. In this specific draft, with the Starmie and the Celebi on the other side, can you make an argument that Heracross gets the nod? Sure. It's also certainly better against Claydol. Now, granted, Medicham can Shadow Ball into Claydol, but Megahorn is going to obviously hurt more. I'm okay with either pick. I still slightly lean Medicham. I just think it's a little bit of a better, more reliable poke. But the concept is the same. Fighters have not been taken. You think you are a lot better at dealing with them than your opponent is. So, now is the time. Double fighter for Vaz makes plenty of sense to me. LouRinaldi is going to go with Charizard and Sceptile. Okay, I mean, I'm not blown away by either pick. The Charizard is never a bad Pokemon, ever. It just isn't. But a lot of stuff on the other side it doesn't love. Zapdos handles it. Milo handles it. Unless you have HP Grass, Swampert handles it. Blissey mostly handles it. You got to watch out for Focus Punch, obviously. Gengar somewhat handles it. Gyarados generally handles it. The Zard doesn't seem incredible in the matchup, and I feel like Vaz was not about to grab that with his next pick. I mean, we'll never know, but... And there are a couple fire weaknesses for Lou, so, like, maybe, but Charizard doesn't blow me away against Vaz. I feel like that could have waited. And the Sceptile is kind of the same deal. Leech Seed annoying against Blissey. Couple Waters that you're good against, but Sceptile generally to me is more of a round 3 pick than a round 2 pick. It doesn't blow me away against the totality of what Vaz has, so both of these picks, for me personally, I feel like there are better things available. I don't love either selection here. Neither one is a bad mon, but it's hard to imagine for me that these are the best things you could be taking in this situation. That being said, Vaz does immediately go with Moltres here, so it makes me wonder if Charizard was on his radar. I guess we'll never know. But he's going to go with Moltres and Umbreon. Umbreon, I guess, is locking up a third special wall for him that he probably feels like he needs. So now Zapdos, Blissey, Umbreon, he should be pretty much all set in that department. And that obviously is going to protect his Gengar a little bit as well. It'll give him the Wish option. Not going to be a Zam counter since that's banned, but I still think Umbreon just as a wall is a fine mon. And then Moltres, we just kind of sort of touched on. There are a few fire weaknesses on the other side. Moltres into Raikou, Jolteon, Starmie isn't necessarily the greatest thing, but just a good mon in general. And if for whatever reason he feels like he himself doesn't want to play against fire mons, well, there is one less good one now that your opponent could take. So Lou is going to instead go with Vaporeon, a much-needed bulky water, and a late Medicham, a mon that I seemingly value higher than most. But I think these are better picks than the Charizard and the Sceptile. He definitely needs a bulky water, given the way the draft is going. Vaporeon, in my opinion, is definitely the best one still available. Again, some people like Slowbro better. I don't. To each their own, but he's going to go with the Vaporeon. And then Medicham, certainly the best fighter still available, maybe even just the best Pokemon still available, but certainly the best fighter still available. Got to get involved. And again, fighters in general, with Double Intimidate on the other side, world beating, no, but that doesn't mean you just don't take any of them. And Medicham is a great pickup at the end of round 2. On the flip side, wrapping up round 2 for Vaz, Blaziken and Steelix. Kind of surprised he didn't grab the Steelix earlier, and likewise kind of surprised that at no point did Lou pick or ban the Steelix, but that is really good value given what's on the other side. Double Electric and Aerodactyl is exactly what you want to be taking Steelix into, and I think that mon will certainly get played as a counter pick given what's on the other side. Blaziken, huh? I'm not so sure. It's outsped by a lot of Lou's team, which is a big problem, and I don't know if there are enough fire and fighting weaknesses, given the fact that a lot of those things can hit Blaziken super effectively as well. I mean, we've seen the flail sweeps, the reversal sweeps. I mean, we know how deadly anything with access to a reversal-esque move can be. I would never underestimate Blaziken in what we know is going to be 3 sandless games with the Tower banned. But that being said, just looking at it on paper, there's just a lot of stuff over here that I don't know Blaziken necessarily beats 1v1. So I'm not so sure about that pick. It could just be taking a dangerous Pokemon off the board, simple as that. May or may not end up getting played. I would never underestimate it, but it doesn't seem like the world's greatest Blaziken setup. I do really like the Steelix pick, though. Like I said, double Electric Aerodactyl on the other side. Very much the kind of matchup where you want to be picking Steelix. So we go to the third and final round of bans, starting with LouRinaldi. He is absolutely adamant about dominating the Spiker Spinner War, and so far he has been very successful in that regard. He has 3 spinners against his opponent's 0, and he's got 1 Spiker against his opponent's 0. I don't mind the Glalie ban because he's trying to win the Spiker Spinner War. Like I said, he's trying to choke his opponent out of good Spikers. My question here is, should he have taken Glalie, because he would have the first double pick after these bans. So I almost wonder if you just leave it out there and you take them on, and it has the same effect. It gives you a Spiker into an opponent who has no spinners, which I like better, and it still denies your opponent any opportunity to make the pick. So I don't hate the ban if he has something else in mind that he really wants or thinks that he needs, but I think I would have leaned towards leaving it out there and taking the Glalie rather than banning it out. But I guess the question ultimately is, what does he end up taking instead, and do I deem it better than taking Glalie here? And I probably won't. I think I really would have wanted the Glalie, but we'll see what he takes. On the flip side, Vaz is going to remove Tauros. Seems acceptable. Every time I see Tauros, I do a normal resistance check, and it's true, he is kind of lacking in that regard. There's both Steelix and Gengar, and that's it, so it's only 2, that's not that many. And those guys both have to be very careful of EQ and HP Ghost, respectively. So I could see not wanting to play against the Tauros from Vaz's seat. That seems like a fine ban. And Lou is going to continue down this strategy. He's going to remove a spinner now in Blastoise. The option's really, really thinning out if Vaz wants to even a little bit contest the spikes. The problem is, like I said, there's only 1 Spiker. I would have much rather seen, instead of Glalie Blastoise, I would have liked to have seen him go like Donphan Blastoise, take out 2 spinners, and then pick a Spiker. That makes sense to me. So I think it's the right fundamental idea for Lou, but I think it might be the wrong execution. And then it's going to be Smeargle being removed for Vaz, which, like I said, I think that Lou kind of helped him out by removing Glalie because Vaz just took out another good spiker. Now I don't really, I mean, winning the Spiker Spinner War is kind of all for naught if you only have one Spiker. It's really not a huge deal if your opponent doesn't have spinners if you only have one Spiker. So that kind of leaves Lou at a weird spot. He's now going to have to take a Quillfish or a Cacturn or an Omastar or something to that effect in order to get spikes. I would much rather if this Glalie ban had just been Donphan or something, and then you just take Glalie here. I think that was definitely a mistake for Lou with the way this is played out, but what he's going to do instead, Kingdra and Venusaur, and I certainly harken back to what I just said. I would not rather have either of these Pokemon than Glalie, so I really think he screwed up with that ban, but looking at the pokes for what they are, Kingdra seems reasonable in the matchup. It doesn't necessarily beat the two Intimidate users, and it obviously doesn't beat Blissey, but it can get ahead of some of this stuff. It doesn't really beat my Milotic either, so I mean, I don't know, maybe the Kingdra's not great. It's never a bad mon unless you're against, like, Blissey on the other side. It might get some value, but it doesn't blow me away in the matchup. The Venusaur seems reasonably good, though. You got some Grass guys on the other side. You've got a couple of, like, again, Leech Seed on the Bliss. Maybe resist that electric from Zapdos. Maybe resist some of the fighting moves here from Yama. Again, seems fine, but doesn't blow me away. Did I mention I'd rather have Glalie? On the flip side, we're going to see Ludicolo and the Cow. Glad to see Miltank getting picked in basically all of these, as she should. Ludicolo, huh? Seems okay. Doesn't blow me away. Round 3 picks are pretty much not going to blow me away in most cases, but yeah, the Ludicolo seems reasonable, especially if it does in fact go with a Swift Swim set. It can actually be pretty threatening against some of this stuff. I could see why that would be good. Miltank as far as stick fat, sure, you've got Regice on the other side, you've got Zard on the other side. Can reasonably handle some of the special base stuff, does give him a second heal bell option if he wants to go down that rabbit hole. Miltank is general glue, and I think it'll be just fine and will get played for Vaz. On the flip side, we've got my boy Weezing, as well as Dusclops, which begins with a D, not an F, but they're next to each other on the keyboard, so cut me some slack. I generally really like Weezing picks. This is probably one of the more underwhelming Weezing situations because some of its better targets are banned out. For example, it hoses the crap out of Regirock, or it hoses the crap out of Lax. Flagon has not yet been picked, but he beats the crap out of that. Now, there is Heracross and Hariyama on the other side, which certainly Weezing is good against those. And if the Ments and the Gyarados go with physical sets, which is likely, then the Weezing beats that as well. It also walls the crap out of Steelix. It beats Miltank. Even when Weezing isn't at its very best, it's still very good. I'm very, very high on Weezing. I view it as closer to a round 2 pick than a round 3 pick, so getting it midway-ish through round 3 is always good value in my mind. I love me some Weezing. The Dusclops does not make a lot of sense to me. It's not really countering anything in particular, and the opponent has not bothered whatsoever with Rapid Spin users. So what spikes are you trying to protect by taking that guy? Not super impressed by that pick. Dusclops just as a wall, I've never rated highly. I don't think it's very good. It's so spikes vulnerable. It's one crit away from just not being there anymore. And it doesn't really beat anything. It can wall stuff, but it never kills anything. If you're just using Dusclops the normal way, the fair way, then I don't think that poke is all that good. I like it only as a spin blocker, generally speaking, and that doesn't seem applicable here, so I don't really love the Dusclops pick. On the flip side, Gardevoir, seeing a lot of love in these recent drafts, and also Entei. The fact that people like Entei so much and are not taking Arcanine, I can't get there. I definitely think Arcanine is not only the better Mon, but the considerably better Mon than Entei in this format. That being said, Vaz apparently throughout the whole damn draft has viewed fire types as better against Lou than I seem to think that they are. I mean, again, there is the Celebi, the Registeel, the Regice. He's now added the Sceptile, the Venusaur. There are fire weaknesses on the other side, but I also see plenty of things where fire types wouldn't be that good. The Aerodactyl, the Vaporeon, the Kingdra, the Starmie, the Claydol. So I guess it really depends, but to me, I don't look at Lou's draft and go, man, I gotta hammer that fire weakness. I don't think they're terrible in the matchup, but I don't think they're amazing either. They're fine. I just don't rate Entei that highly. Perfectly usable, perfectly playable, but never a Mon that I'm excited to have on my team or that I think is the thing that I need in the matchup. And if you're going to take a fire type, like I said, I really prefer Arcanine, but Entei's fine. Gardevoir, huh? Okay, first thing I do, let's look at trace targets. We do have 2 natural cures that you can trace. We do have the Jolteon Volt Absorb, and then you have the Claydol Levitate, and the Vaporeon Water Absorb. So trace seems pretty good in the matchup. Interesting that it's Gardevoir rather than Porygon 2. I don't hate that, just they kind of function differently. They both have trace, but they otherwise do pretty different things. Gardevoir is a nice diverse threat, and we'll see if that gets played and how he wants to customize it. So Lou does in fact take a Spiker, which brings me back to wouldn't you rather have Glalie, but we are settling instead for Omastar. Ooh boy. And also grabbing Flygon. I think Omastar is absolute garbaggio. It's probably better in this format than it is in other draft formats because you don't know when it's coming, but I think in Emerald Open or in the team draft format, Omastar is heinous, unplayable garbage. In this, it might be acceptable, but I cannot stress loudly enough that I would much, 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 much rather have a Glalie. As far as the Flygon, man, there's actually not all that many ground weaknesses on the other side. I see the Blaziken, the Steelix, the Entei, and I think that's literally it. Yeah, I think that's literally it. And then as far as rock attackers on the other side for Vaz, yeah, I mean, the fighters can have Rock Slide, I guess. Mence could have Rock Slide. Gyarados could have HP Rock. Doesn't seem that useful to me. I'm not seeing a lot of ground weaknesses. I'm not seeing a lot of things that are realistic. We gotta have rock attacks. I do see multiple bulky waters on the other side. And I do see another Mon that can now be traced. I don't think I like the Flygon pick either. It doesn't seem that exciting to me in this matchup. There's also Gengar on the other side too. Not sure what Flygon is going to achieve here. I think it doesn't match up very well against a lot of this stuff. Dragonite could just have Ice Beam, Zapdos, Gengar, Blissey beats it, Waters beat it. Don't think I like the Flygon. Maybe it's a protection pick to some extent for his double electric. If so, fine. But as far as actually playing the Flygon, doesn't blow me away. On the flip side, we are going to see Houndoom and Articuno. The Houndoom might be a protection pick for the Gengar to make sure his opponent can't take that. It's also yet another fire attacker if he's still in the camp that's where he wants to be. The Articuno, I always love. It performs better with spikes, which he doesn't have. Very interesting that for Vaz, he spent the entire draft. I mean, he's got one pick floating, but has not taken a single spiker or a single spinner all draft long. Just doesn't care about either of those things. So Articuno is not necessarily going to be much of an offensive threat with no sand and no spikes, but it's going to be a hell of a wall. It could shut off Starmie forever, Sceptile forever, Kingdra forever, and it's a pretty good threat. I mean, it doesn't necessarily shut off Aerodactyl, obviously, but Aerodactyl doesn't want to switch into it, and same deal. It doesn't necessarily shut off Raikou and Jolteon, but they've got to be careful coming in. I like me some Articuno for sure. I don't know that it's going to be at its absolute peak in this matchup, but there's only the one good rock attacker on the other side that really hoses it. Most of the fire mons are on Vaz's side, so only Charizard can stab fire attack it. And yeah, If you need a special wall, or if you want to potentially free up your Zapdos to do something other than be a special wall, Articuno is a fine pick. I think that Mon is very underrated and a very good pickup late in round 3 for Vaz. Finishing out the draft for LouRinaldi, he's going to take Slowbro, giving him another bulky water, which I think is wise. And then he's going to take Arcanine. Better late than never. Yeah, Slowbro needs another bulky water. He's got Vaporeon. You can use Starmie as a kind of sort of bulky water. He's got 2.5, 3 if you want to count the Starmie. That is better than where he was before. I think picking up another bulky water is a good decision. Arcanine I also think is a good pick. Not only do I think it's a good mon in general, but I think there's multiple things over here that don't want to be intimidated. And furthermore, Fire seems like a reasonable, not amazing, but reasonable attacking type against a lot of what's on the other side. Also, extreme speed, very valuable in this format. Not too many things over here threatening reversal, but Heracross and Blaziken stick out like a sore thumb, so you definitely want to have good options and not be forced to run stupid quick attack or something to that effect. Breloom never got picked, so you don't have Mach Punch. So your best bet perhaps is extreme speed. Enter the Arcanine. And finally, the last pick. A mon that I will never play and that I do not rate at all. I think this thing sucks. Slaking. Nothing to say beyond what I already said. Not a mon you'll ever see me draft or ever play. I think it's terrible, but that's what he picked. We'll see if he ends up using the Slaking. And that is our draft. Predictions, predictions, predictions. It's tough. I think that Vaz certainly had the better overall draft. But Lou does have the double spiker into an opponent who didn't even try to take a rapid spinner. Instead of stupid Slaking, he could have taken Donphan or Tentacruel. Didn't even bother. He's just not worried about it. So we know for sure, and I assume that Lou will bring the Omastar. Why wouldn't you when your opponent has 0 rapid spinners? So there's going to be 2 games in which Lou's got spikes, and Vaz just cannot remove them, period. So that's obviously the one big advantage that Lou has. The Cloyster, the Claydol, the Starmie as spinners don't matter because his opponent didn't pick up spikes either. But I don't necessarily view that as a bad thing. Like I said, it just frees up a move slot. So Starmie is now going to be Off Star, or it's going to be T-Wave Recover to attack. Seems perfectly fine. Cloyster can now run all of Surf, Ice Beam, Boom, and Spikes, or something to that effect, or maybe it'll have Rest. Claydol can now be Earthquake, Shadow Ball, Rock Slide, Boom, or something to that effect. I think it's not a big deal that he picked up all those spinners and they won't actually be spinning. I think that part is totally fine. So the one advantage that I do really give to Lou is the fact that he's going to have 2 games of spikes that his opponent can't remove. But I think that Vaz had the better draft as a whole. I found myself multiple times throughout looking at Lou's draft, and I didn't count, but I know that I said several times, don't really love that pick, doesn't really blow me away. I know that the Charizard and the Sceptile, not bad mons, didn't excite me. Dusclops didn't excite me. Kingdra, Venusaur, they're fine, they're not junk, didn't excite me. Whereas, I mean, there were 1 or 2 with Vaz as well that I didn't necessarily love. The Entei, for example, I found underwhelming rather, but for the most part, I liked and was on board with Vaz's picks. I also think the fact that he's got the double Intimidate user is very good. Now, granted, it's not a full-on wash in that regard. Lou did pick up the Arcanine to even that up a little bit. I think the better bulky waters are on the right-hand side. I think that the double reversal user is on the right-hand side, but again, not a total wash. Maybe Medicham could go reversal as well for Lou. It's a closer one. A lot of the time I'm a little bit more decisive, and it's kind of more of a stomp. I kind of, like in the last draft, I said I definitively like DJ Arctic Pirates draft better. So it's hard to tell, but I'm going to give the nod to Vaz here. If he ends up losing games to Spikes, he has absolutely no one but himself to blame. But Vaz has impressed me as compared to the average player in this tournament as far as his skill as a player. He seems reasonably good, and I think I'd rather have his draft. I'm a little bit annoyed, like I said. Like, to me, stupid Entei and certainly stupid Slaking would have been a rapid spinner. I don't get why in the Slaking slot. Why wouldn't you just take Donphan there? I don't understand that. What do you have to lose by taking Donphan? It's decent against the Electrics. It gives you a spinner. There's only one Ghost on the other side, so you only have a 1 in 3 to even run into the Dusclops. And if you do, Donphan as a spinner can threaten the Dusclops. Didn't you read the description on Smogon? So I don't know, but I am going to fault him for that. Slaking, to me, definitely should have been Donphan. I don't know why he didn't try to take a rapid spinner, if he's just being stubborn, or if he gave up on the cause long ago. But that little nitpick aside, I am going to select Vaz as the winner here. But unlike the previous one, I don't think this one was a stomp in the draft, and I don't necessarily feel super strongly about it. But that is going to be my pick. So we have a comment section for a reason. Use it. Let me know. Who do you think has the edge in this draft and why? I would always appreciate an analysis other than my own. You guys all have the right to be wrong. Hit that like button, and I will see you guys for more Callous Draft League in a upcoming video coming soon.